on the Zoom, no matter how hard you try. So it's apology for Sally, and until we get Gary online, we need to probably pop in an apology for Gary, should we? Yes. Yeah, okay, we'll do that. So do I have a movement?
Yes.
Murray, seconder, Robin, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Gary, awesome, thank you. So now just go straight into submissions. Just firstly like to reiterate the protocols. This is a forum where we listen to the people of our communities of the district, and that we ask them questions for clarification, and we expect everybody to treat everyone else with respect. So just wanted to reiterate those core parameters for today's hearings. And now I'd just like to invite our first submitter, Greg Hampton, on behalf of the Treasury, page 501. So welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have Treasury Manager Danielle Campbell with me.
You can please take a read that we have read your submissions.
Yes, yeah, take it as read, yep. Thank you. Just wake my computer up.
I'll give you a signal at 4 minutes.
Okay. Good morning, Your Worship, councillors and staff. I'm Greg Hampton, the chairperson of the Coromandel Heritage Trust, otherwise known as the Treasury, and I have Danielle Campbell with me, the Treasury Manager. Firstly, I'd like to thank Council for the funding that has been provided to Treasury from the last LTP. It's greatly appreciated, and it has enabled us to make some good progress that we wish to take forward as well. So that's much appreciated. Taking the submission as read, so we'll focus our presentation on why Council would consider our funding and what that funding will deliver. So firstly, the significance of the Treasury as a facility and service. The Treasury is the only purpose-built facility of its type within the Thames-Coromandel, Hauraki and Ohenamuri sub-region. It provides a venue and archive infrastructure to house an ever-growing collection of our people's documentary heritage. The archive is purpose-built to responsibly protect, preserve and celebrate the history and stories of our people. We provide unique services to the community, allowing people to research, celebrate and connect to the past and to each other. Our current membership is over 100, and we have 55 active volunteers who donate their time and skills to make these heritage treasures available to the public. I want to highlight that although located in Thames, the Treasury is not a Thames-centric facility and service. The Trust is focused to deliver our services across the Eastern Waikato sub-region, including all of the Thames-Coromandel District, and for this reason we have spread our funding submission across the 3 council areas. So you'll see in our submission that we have also made submission to Hauraki District Council and to Matamata District Council. So why fund heritage and what are the benefits? So the full benefits are set out in our funding submission document, but I want to highlight today that apart from the obvious social and cultural reasons for funding the Treasury, there is a clear economic development benefit as well. A couple of examples to demonstrate this. Museum experiences and genealogy as a hobby are hugely popular and highly valued the world over. Genealogy was recently confirmed as the second most popular hobby in America, and that popularity continues to increase. It is also the second most widely researched category on the internet, which is pretty significant when you think about it. In a New Zealand context, if you Google Auckland's most popular visitor attractions, 4 Auckland museums are listed within the top 20 and 2 are listed in the top 10.
4 minutes.
If well-resourced, well-marketed and professionally managed, museums and heritage centres are a genuine visitor attraction opportunity that can benefit local economic development. How are they funded generally? I'd like to offer a myth buster. The myth is that community facilities and services can be self-sustainable without local government support. Almost without exception, community facilities and services of any scale or quality exist only because they are supported by local authority funding. Be it museums, art galleries, libraries or swimming pools, without local government funding, they will not thrive or survive. I do want to make it clear, though, that our board is very focused on other funding sources and we are continually applying for funding to other funders. Those funds, though, are highly contested and cannot be a reliable source of funding. Do you want me to wrap up now?
Yes, thank you. You've had your 5 minutes.
So our submission is that Council allocates funding of $60,000 per annum for the purposes of base salaries to professionally manage and staff the Treasury services. This is the first cab off the rank, and submissions are also being made to HDC and MPDC. If I can further note, actually, I'll just go through. So the rough estimate of what that would cost. So if it was a general rate, and these are rough, you'll have better figures than I do. 28,000 rating units, average rate per unit $2.15. Economic development rate, if that was rated in that form, it would be $60.42 per economic development rating.
Thank you, Greg, that's 6 minutes. I'm sorry, we can't allow people to go over time because we've got a very full program today. So, Danielle, I've neglected to welcome you to the meeting. Are there any questions? And could we please have the additional information there?
Absolutely. And any other information that you require, we're happy to provide that for the deliberations.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the opportunity, Your Worship.
Martin.
So the 120, so the Thames-Coromandel District, you're looking for 60, and then the remaining 60 spread across
the other two.
Equally.
And that's pretty much pro rata spread.
Right.
Any other questions? There being none, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
Now I invite Jan Wright, who's on team, and Debbie Lim on behalf of Creative Coromandel via Microsoft Teams, and Rob Johnson. Rob Johnson. So welcome, Jan, Rob.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Hello, Rob. Good to see you there. So thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. 5 minutes. We're going to talk fast and there may be some questions as well. We assume that, our submission has been read and therefore we'll just hit the main points really. The main points are, thank you so much TCDC for 3 years of diminishing funding for our arts organisation, district-wide arts organisation. We're drawing to a close right at the moment. I think possibly a key point is that for TCDC is that we have significantly increased Creative Coromandel's income from other sources over the last 2 years. We have been successful, particularly in 2020, with 25,000 from Creative New Zealand, funding the Partner Up mentoring program for developing artists across the district. Very, very successful. And very recently we've been successful in securing 30,000 from Lottery Community. Now what we want to do is to allocate 15 of that 30,000 towards paying an arts manager for the district. Now we are a group of volunteers apart from 2 very part-time contractors who support us. Costs us about $2,000 a month for those 2 contractors. without further funding, we can treat water, we can continue to do what we're doing at the moment, and I think what we do at the moment is quite successful, but we actually want to develop. There is a colossal opportunity, as I think Council now knows, there is a colossal opportunity for arts tourism, for arts and culture and heritage tourism in the district, and that needs to be developed. We have got Destination Coromandel's support to develop a district-wide arts festival, which runs for about 6 months of the year through October to April, and then a little short 3-month arts festival over winter. These are the sorts of things that as volunteers we don't have the capacity to do. We need paid assistance. So we are appealing to TCDC for 20,000 for 3 years. Thank you. 60,000 in total to allow us to develop, to do what we want to do. I think that's about it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. And Rob, what have I missed out?
No, I don't think you've missed anything, Jan. I think you've summarised it well. We're a voluntary body. We're doing really well at the moment. We've provided a conduit and a connection between artists, arts groups, and that on the peninsula. But if we want to really develop it, and I think we can, get these arts festivals, get more linkage, and get more tourism in for this specific, for the arts, I think we can do it, but we do need that support. We need administrative marketing funding that we can put into those sorts of professional services for us. We'll still do the grunt work behind the scenes, but we need people that can actually do that, the nuts and bolts of that side of things for us. I think
Time's met. So any questions of Jan or Rob?
I've just got one, if I can, and I've been closest, but the relationship you're now building with Destination Coromandel, who's another adjunct to council, is that working well?
Yes, it is, Terry. They're excited about the concept of an arts festival. It's quite easy to do because there is so much already happening here. Really all Creative Coromandel needs to do is draw it all together and have it coordinated and well marketed. And this is the sort of thing that we would be using council funds for a paid coordinator. We would go elsewhere for further funding, you know, maybe 75,000, 100,000 is possible elsewhere.
Thank you. Any further questions? There being none, thank you both, Jan.
thank you very much. Terrific. Thank you.
Hugh Chapman. Hugh Chapman available?
No, he's not.
Is he coming on? No, okay. Keith Tremper. Welcome, Keith. Tracy Adams or Bruce Smith with you?
No, I'm on my own today. They let me go solo, they trust me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
I'll have to keep saying, give somebody else a go. Thank you. I'm here to say thank you. TCDC, or the council is here, has supported Life Aid for over 30 years. That's amazing. The faithfulness to us, we can only thank you. So we've put in for, the people who enjoyed the blokes in sheds too. I think I saw them there in transit.
It was really good fun. Yeah, no, we thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Our thanks to COVID.
And I think we've got a photo of you with Ash Tanner and
As well, yeah.
So we've put in for 20,000 into your long-term district plan. We now receive about 14, I think, from you guys, plus GST, inflation adjusted. We're just future-proofing our organisation. And I'll leave it just like that and let you guys ask me questions.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's fantastic. So do we have any questions of Bruce, of Keith? I'm just looking.
We do visit every school on the Coromandel. We even educator even gets into Kennedy's Bay. We've really grown the business.
This is Life Education Trust.
So I'm closely involved with schools, and I'm just trying to think how I can phrase a question to thank you for what you do, but I might just sneak a thank you in under that's what's provided in there. So thank you for what you do for schools. It's fantastic for the kids.
Well, thank you. It is very fulfilling that also that we've been able to grow the business. We took over Madman because they failed there. We get into Waikato District Council. We get into Western Bays. We were also asked to take over down as far as Catacat. During the COVID, some of the life feeds fell over financially, but we just couldn't visit. We're now visiting 70 schools and around about, we might close in on 6,000 children this year. If all our schools came on annual, we couldn't cope. There's no way we could do it. Financially, we're in quite a good position. I'm not going to tell lies to you. We have two very good ladies in our organisation, Frances Nichol and Catherine Quinn. They're constantly at every trust in the country for funding, and I think we're the fourth, or either the second or third strongest life feed in New Zealand. But I can only thank you guys. I mean, 30 years with us. You founded us, along with Hauraki and the Thames College. We wouldn't have got going without Life and Women's Division of Federated Farms. They were the founders of it. Just future in the organisation, and we hope to carry on. I don't know if any of you guys were here 30 years ago when we started.
Rightio, no, Keith.
I'm not admitting.
We'll hold that history. So your time is rapidly now running out. So thank you very much for your submission.
Thank you for listening. Have a good day and try and stay awake this afternoon.
It's a big day. Thank you. Ron Julia. 131. Welcome on.
Thank you very much, my submission was in respect of multiple SUIP rates being imposed on Te Puru Holiday Park and Mercury Bay Holiday Parks. I take my submission is accepted, read and understood by councillors, so I won't go there, but I'd just like to reinforce. Councillors, you councillors here, you're the wise heads who put themselves forward and have been chosen by the community to represent the community at a high order governance level. The big picture is extremely important and trusting position in the community, and we rely on you. You are our leaders. And councillors employ Rob, C, who then employ staff and with various qualifications and expertise for day-to-day running, etc. Councillors can't be expected to know all the detail, the intricacies, every little detail of what staff do or how they do it. You must rely on Rob, your educated overview, your knowledge, and your own wisdom and judgment, and they're the qualities you're elected upon. So I'm just reinforcing that platform. There's no doubt that staff have put their smart interpretation on the SUIP rating situation that's being put upon us, doing their best job as they see it. The important task here today for councillors is to see both sides without baggage. Interpretation is simply that, interpretation. Not definitely right or wrong, but how one person might interpret something differently from another, often influenced by various situations behind them in your emotion. Councils must take a higher order perspective. The overwhelming iniquity of the SUIP rating burden imposed on our campgrounds is blatantly obvious and well out of balance. This is undeniable. Legal advice is useful, usually supporting the position of the person asking for it, but you can't go past the stand back test. Stand back and ask yourself, is this right? Is this just? It's not your problem to resolve, and that is why you have Rob. Your role is to recognise the problem, show leadership and give direction. It's then up to Rob and his team to review the policy and adjust accordingly. I might liken it to a rugby analogy. The original rules of rugby were drawn up in 1845. The game has changed little, but the constant change by governing bodies has been how the rules are interpreted and applied for all sorts of reasons, responding to health, safety of players, control of the game, spectators, etc. You councillors are the governing body, Rob's the ref, and the staff are the players. Your rule book on SUIP rates does not need to change, but can and should be interpreted to apply more equitably in our situation. There must be provision for unique situations. Potential knock-on effects, no pun intended, should not influence your direction, the direction you convey to Rob and your team. This is your responsibility as governors. And are there any questions you might like to put to me that, or clarifications in my submission?
Well done. Thank you. Any questions for Ron? So we'll give the SUIPs every consideration. Thank you very much.
I will take all sorts. Thank you.
I now invite John Spencer. John, 173.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm from Whangamata. I'm an appointed advocate and also a member of the committee of the Harbour Care and Ratepayers Association and Great Power. The items ticking the boxes to make it simple for the submission that's been made. In general terms, we have an issue with the camper vans, which I know you have a heading of proposed car parking fees. The camper vans, particularly in my local Island Reserve, is a problem right throughout the year. I find in my very frequent walks down to the beach that car park is full of cars. They're not self-contained. I see there's an allowance for improving the toilet facilities in Island Bay Reserve, which have got to be paid for. And I would make a suggestion, if I may, to council to perhaps institute a scheme of select and pay, something of that nature, something that is of low maintenance for ongoing things, but at least it will come some return to this district for the facilities that are provided. The other big issue, which will be many speakers of, which will follow me today, of the Lindsay Road property. It will be a crime, in my view, to sell off the jewels rather, in the last remaining area that we have for a proposal for a community hub. There is an allowance in the community board's submission to make a business plan, and I hope the council will allow that to go forward and come forward with ideas that the community can develop. My biggest submission point today, which I've made under other feedback items, is the question of mangroves. Now, before everybody falls asleep, mangroves has been with us for 10 years, and there was a statement of intent which was entered into by the regional council and the district council in 2015-16, which you have a copy of in front of you. The timetable that was set out in many ways, without poking anybody about it, has not been met. It seems to have disappeared completely in the 10-year plan that is before us now for this district council. And I'd have to say, and we in Whangamata are particularly incensed about the treatment that we've had from the regional council, which is not your concern, but however, the notes under the feedback items, the mangroves continue to degrade our harbour and estuaries to the detriment of wading birds, fish life and public amenity access and values. It's a big loss to the citizens and also the visitors into Whangamata to not be able to access the beaches as they used to. In my lifetime, I first went to Whangamata in 1965. I'm afraid there's an awful lot of people alive today that have never ever seen or witnessed those beaches in the pristine way that they were in those early days. And they just take it for granted now, in the last 20 years, that what is there is what has always been there, and that is not the case. It's a disgrace and it's getting worse. The Waikato Regional Council have charged the Whangamata community over $2.5 million over the last 10 years to remove just 16 hectares of mangroves. An absolute disgrace, something like $90,000 per hectare. It's ongoing. It's ongoing. So what I'm looking for in terms of our communities, the statement of intent, it's listed. There are 7 items rather, of a program to attend to this, and I'm just putting it to this district council as to what they're going to do about it, because it's not going to go away and it's got to be dealt with. Is that winding up? I'll just add to that the parallel condition in the Bay of Plenty and also in Auckland areas is entirely different in terms of the servicing of the community, getting alongside and supporting what we call coastal care groups to do the work. We are very capable of doing it in Whangamata, and we need some assistance and we need some support from this district council. Thank you very much.
Well done, thank you very much, John. Any questions of John? There being none, thank you for the copy of the letter of intent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Andrea McCartney. On my vote.
Good morning. Okay, hi everyone. I've got 4 short points. I'm very pleased to see that you're opening up spatial plan. That was one of my points that I was going to talk about. I saw the email come out yesterday, that we need more land for development. We need to go south. We've got plenty of land. I just need council, economic development and developers to work together. So I'm very pleased to see that that is progressing, and I would encourage you to progress it. Freedom camping, I think you probably all know I'm at Sunset Motel and have been for a long time. We believe that only fully plumbed vehicles, properly self-contained, should be allowed for Freedom Camp, and they certainly should not be allowed anywhere near a business. There are many existing businesses, including ours, operating, and we shouldn't be allowed to camp near there. There are other areas that can be used. I think when we looked at Freedom Camping the other day, there was talk about dock and so forth. So I think somebody needs to take the leadership on that and look into those areas. The Thames Information Centre, I'm concerned. I don't know exactly what's happening there, but that's another area of concern. I don't know if anyone's going to pick it up and run it or what we're going to do, but people come to town, and I know we've got Google and we've all got our phones. Sometimes if you've got the vibe there, which I don't agree with, but that's okay. You need something for people to go to, something that's open. I recently discovered it wasn't open at the weekends for some period of time. Well, that's just bloody ridiculous, basically. We can't develop, and it should be part of economic development, to have that kind of thing operating efficiently around the district, because our heritage is gold. I'm not big on heritage, but we're not making the most of what we've got. Okay, and closing an information centre or reducing it too much just defies all logic, in my opinion. My major thing here today is I'm really concerned that we've been here 22 years and it had never been a business association. I was part of the working group that worked every week to help Heather and the team set that up. We met every week at Heather's, and we put a lot of work in, and I think you need to continue to fund that. I don't think we're there yet. I don't know. I just don't think we are. I think we need another at least 1 to 3 years of some kind of funding. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I think you need to continue to support it. I don't want it to fall over. I'm not saying it's going to, but I'm just saying it's really important. 22 years without anything, and we've finally got something. You need to give it a bit more of a hand for a bit longer. That's it.
Well done, thank you. Are there any questions for Andrea? Appreciate it, Andrea. Thank you very much indeed. John here, Priya and Marcelle. Yeah.
So John's running a tad late, so.
Do you want me to Morris Perry? Would you like to take Morris Perry before? Okay, thank you very much, Morris. 1216, on page 216, Brandon.
I'm Morris Perry from Whangamata, Kalimera. And I chose the term Kalimera because it's Greek for good morning. And the reason I used that specifically is I assume that from the long-term plan that I've seen, that Greek economics is being applied here. And what it's, I've got detailed submissions which I've put forward, but it really concerns me that we're running on a basis of borrow and hope. We know what happened to the Greek economy. It collapsed. And it collapsed when debt was called in. I've no idea from the information I could read how indebted our assets are. And I cannot find anywhere in the long-term plan anything about cost reduction. It's just more spending. And I think that is the road to disaster. We can't keep on borrowing money for goodness knows what in a lot of cases. It's almost like a Ponzi scheme. We borrow money and then we deploy it somewhere. We get in rates, we deploy it somewhere. But we don't really do anything that's going to improve the lot of the ratepayers who fundamentally fund this whole thing, or the people who live in our district. All we're doing is borrowing money and maybe one day we can pay it back. I mean, the furore among Whangamata, of course, is selling that piece of land on the corner of Lindsay. You're sort of left with the impression that the only reason that's the only asset being sold in this long-term plan is because it's the only one that's not in debt. You know, it's the only thing left unencumbered that we can sell. It's a scary situation. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be spending money, but I'm saying if we're spending money, we need to know exactly how it's being spent, what debts we're incurring with it, and on what. And every damn project should have a cost reduction program right front and centre every time. That's so I've got the details of my submission, which you've said. That's all I really wanted to say. And I do believe that the majority of the people I talk to in Whangamata, of all ages, of all walks of life, really do think that this situation is untenable into the future, and this is a 10-year plan. That's all I want to say.
Thank you very much, Morris. Appreciate it. Are there any questions? Sorry, no.
Yeah, John, you go, Morris, rather, you go into the Whangamata offices and have a look at the public papers for our meetings and have a look at the financial reports?
I try to follow it online.
I suggest to answer a lot of your questions, go and have a look at the reports because you'll get a lot of the information.
I know there's information there. It's whelming information. Look at the size of the submissions that we've got on the table here. You know,
Sorry, it was only a yes or no question. I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking time. Thank you, Morris. Right.
Thank you. So,
Do you want me to wait? Right, okay, Tom, welcome. And Stephen as well. What, did you both want to come up? There's another chair there.
Thank you, Mayor Sandra. Good morning, councillors and staff. I'm Tom Hollings. I'm the Executive Officer of the Coromandel Marine Farmers Association, and I have here Stephen Hand, who's the Chair of the Association and the Chief Executive of Parry Hauraki. We've got 4 brief points. Firstly, we oppose the imposition of a new wharf charge and an associated licence at Sugarloaf. It's a facility that was paid for 2/3 by the industry, so it is exceptional. We've got already a cost recovery system there in place, so we don't want this new system. And you would have technical difficulties doing it, like collecting data, you know, because the vessels, if they come in for less than 30, they pay X, more than 30, Y, 60, Z. So where to get the data, so it's all too hard. Although it's your decision, but we oppose it at Sugarloaf. We propose, alternatively, you come and talk to us directly, as you have in the past, about Sugarloaf cost recovery, and we have a system already in place, as I said. For the town wharf, we don't support it. We oppose the changes there. At Sugarloaf, they'd basically quadruple the rates there. Ditto at the town wharf, they'd be quadrupled. albeit a lower base. And we can see some technical difficulties there too about charging for muscle service trucks. I mean, is that a transferable approval? So a company brings different trucks, or every truck has to be registered? Not quite clear on how that would work. So we oppose the new regime at the town wharf, and we do support fully your plans for roading improvements at State Highway 25 intersection on the Takuma Road and along the Takuma Road itself. These are some years away to come in the LTP, 10 years, and we fully support those. And that's it. I could say more, but yeah.
Look, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Tom? No. Thank you, Tom. You can stay there. And Stephen, you want to just reiterate what Tom says?
Well, Modena, councillors and staff and guests. I am actually General Manager of Pariharaki Kaimoana, which is the aqua or the asset holding company, and that holds all the aquaculture interests and other commercial interests of Pariharaki. So I'm here on behalf of my chair, Hari Makari, and Iwi. And I just wanted to say that how much we do support the industry, how important the industry is to us. And we are at in a cycle where COVID has had an impact on the industry, and imposition of new charges would be very difficult for us. We see the impact of COVID starting to recover in markets like, I understand I'm not a marine farmer, I'm actually just a manager and accountant through background, but we do see, I understand the impacts of COVID starting to improve in the areas of the US market with the vaccination program going ahead. And the new wharf that we're working on there, which I'm a director of, that's important to today's production as well as new production for the future, not the least of which is for safety reasons. But the future, I know there might be some questions about, hey, how will the importance of the new wharf and its relationship with the Takuma Road, intersection of Takuma Road. I know those questions will float around. All I can say is that we believe that our area believes very much in the future of agriculture, the benefits it has, and the need for the sugarloaf and the roading and the wharfage infrastructure, because of the big impact it has in the social structure of that area, employment and well-paid jobs for iwi people in that area, and iwi is a very heavy investor in the agriculture industry. So I'm here very much to answer any questions as well, but we would like to, we have a process in place to rebuild the wharf, and there'll be some cost that will fall on the marine farmers and industry because of that, and that's great, and it's with the full support of council, I know, which is very much appreciated, and we do support what you're proposing for the Takuma Road and intersection. So I'm just open to any questions really.
Are there any, Martin?
Yeah, so you're saying here that the critical to maintain the local state highway network for transportation. It also says sea-based transport is too costly an option. So is that going to be made any more or less costly with the Kopu facility, or are you not really transporting stuff to there? Is it more getting it off to Auckland?
Well, the Kopu, the industry very much supported Kopu as a backup site. It had initial work. We supported council's work in that area as a marine services precinct.
Okay.
Because of the fact we, it was some real benefits to taking the boats over to Auckland to be maintained, and some of the products that are made around there is quite useful for that. But it's had real limitations in terms of the distance from the Coromandel Township, if you like, the Sugarloaf area where the boats are docked, the staff live. The actual steam time doesn't make it economic in any sense to share travelling time, unless on a minor case a farm happened to be stationed very close to Kopu. And what's going to happen? There's also tidal issues there, seabird issues. It's as you might well know, it's an internationally recognised bird sanctuary, and and not the least of which was what's going to be underneath it and the potential to flood and damage the berthages and, there's a number of issues, but the primary issue is the industry is based in Coromandel Township, and it just wouldn't work streaming, as I understand it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? There being none, thank you to you both, Tom and Stephen, really appreciate it. Well, now for, where are we? Marcella? Yeah. Dolphina and Marcella?
Thank you very much. Been expected many times around.
I saw that. All three of you welcome to go.
Take Gary's
Take the chair at the end there. Yeah. It gives it, no, we've got 3 chairs, we've got 3 others. 3 chairs to go. Exactly. Right, you've got 1 minute.
Take a deep breath now.
We're sticking to time. Yeah.
Apologies for
I
that.
told him 4 actually.
No, look, we're running a little bit ahead of time, so, but I don't like to give that news out too much because we've got a big day. So welcome, John, and Marceli and Carol. Carol, welcome to you all.
Thank you very much, Sandra. And Carol is the chair of the Onimana Residents and Community Association, and Marceli is a committee member with myself. The Onimana Residents and Community Association, or ORCA as it's also known, submission was born out of a public meeting that we held over the peak holiday period. And we did this, and we chose that timing primarily because we wanted our submission to be a community submission and not just a submission from ORCA, the committee as such. So the 380 residents out there have all had the chance to have an input into our submission. At that meeting, there were 2 main agenda items. The first was the review of the Freedom Camping Bylaw, and we've already submitted on that. And the second was our community's response to your long-term plan. Following the meeting, we developed our submission to the long-term plan, and then we actually sent that back to those that had attended the meeting, so at least they felt part of the process. And obviously there was some input that came back to that before we finalised our submission. And we're aware we've only got a relatively short period of time to present today, and we don't want to go through the whole submission. We just really want to highlight pretty much on the summary on page 1, which is items A to D. And the reason for us not wanting to go into all of this is primarily it's all pretty much covered in the document. I'm not sure there'll be any questions. How we do want to use this time, though, is just to highlight and reinforce to the councillors in terms of the way that you possibly need to think in terms of making your considerations. The council's long-term draft shows you have listened. You listened last year when we submitted, advising that while we understood the reasoning for a potential 11% rate increase, we found that such increases couldn't be justified. And you have subsequently agreed that council's budget and your work program must now focus on need rather than want. So to assist in achieving this, we're asking that councillors bury the politics around decision making. The position you find yourself in is a real challenge. You face the position you're in and the challenges you face means that we believe that politicking and politics have no place in the considerations and deliberation. There is only one thing that really matters, and that's the wider good of the Coromandel Peninsula. Not Colville, not Onimana, not Whitianga or Thames, etc. When you talked last year about a potential 11% rate increase, what was signalled was that we were in trouble. You know, anybody that needed to put up the rates by 11%, there was obviously some underlying issues. Mind you, we all know that you're not the only council facing this dilemma. Your next decisions now must only drive outcomes that will benefit our wider peninsula community. We could have easily put forward a list of things that only Onimana would love. We purposely did not do this. While we know we are only a little community, we realise that our council faces a massive challenge. Now, as you have indicated, it's the time to dig in and change. The exciting and encouraging thing is your draft indicates that you want to do this. And also just broaden this out a little. When we refer to council, we're not just talking about the people that are sitting around this table. We're also talking about your staff, Rob and his team. And through his executive and including all the members of the TCDC team, hopefully they're not looking at this exercise as just another exercise in mandatory consultation. This is a wake-up call. Unfortunately, and we realise it is sometimes difficult to implement compliance without cracking a few eggs, but as previously mentioned, unfortunately, public negative opinion of council's operations far outweigh the positives. Rob, you and your team need to put yourselves in the shoes of the residents, the ratepayers, the business owners, our community stakeholders, and the other stakeholders or potential stakeholders, and act accordingly. A good option is to adopt a positive, proactive culture, replacing a reactive stance. Therefore, councillors, prudence with the financial business case must extend and include implementing a staff culture based on proactive employees delivering effective ratepayer and community-based stakeholder outcomes.
Then,
just about finished.
Ding.
Come on, you told me.
I mean, that's the 4-minute ding.
Okay, thank you. So, councillors, thanks for giving us some hope. Our submission targets core activities and it focuses on what we need, not what we want. The message from our residents is very clear. Work with us. It is going to take us all working in the same direction, paddling that water together to ensure our region continues to prosper, develop, go forward and be an even better place to live. Now, I'd just like Marcelli to make a couple of observations which she'd like to do, and I know we've got 15 seconds to go.
Justify me coming. Thanks, John. So 3 key points. So the other speakers have had 4, I've got 3. TCDC must concentrate on its fundamental purpose. And that's effective delivery of core services, including statutory requirements. That is, no frills until this is achieved, please. The draft LTP lists a rates affordability limit, which is 2% more than the local government cost index, and in this LTP is ignored for the first 3 years. To me, that's absolutely not acceptable and certainly not affordable from a ratepayer's perspective. From this draft plan, it's apparent we can't actually afford even the no frills plan. Hence, the team must focus on reprioritising activities and projects in this draft and establish the best LTP for the total district. So that was point 2. Point 3, we seek council staff and elected community representatives demonstrating their expertise and working cohesively to focus on delivering commitments on time, in full, within budget. We'd really like you to start that work with revising this draft LTP to an affordable level and to the best LTP for our district, please. So thanks for your attention today and look forward to lots of future action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of John, Marcelli or Carol?
Very good, thank you.
Just one. You've got a few priorities areas you identify in your A to D, and so if you had to identify that key one, would it be water and wastewater?
Water is at the top of our list, you know, obviously.
Particularly where we live.
You know, water system is.
You ran a number together and see, so I'm just. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate your submission.
Thank you.
And thanks for your flexibility.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I was at work, okay?
That's all right, we wait. We do our best.
That's all right.
Service on time and delivered to the optimum. Thank you, John. Actually, Phil, would you like to come forward? 435. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for letting me come along. What I'd like to talk to you about is Toka Valley Road. this was programmed as a possibility, but not as a definite in the previous plan. Got just a few notes I'd like to look through. I've lived in Thames for 32 years, and ever since I moved here, council, people in Thames have said Totara Valley is going to be the next development of Thames. We still actually have over in the office the 1977 scheme plans for Totara Valley. That's how long Totara Valley has been considered for. Unfortunately, because of the circumstances in 1977, part of the land was sold off and you had piecemeal development. You now have 26 lots in the stretch up to Sawmill Road and another 19 lots above Sawmill Road. Now, I've been involved in a number of proposals to develop Sawmill Road, not Sawmill Road, sorry, Totara Valley, above Sawmill Road. And these are ranged from 15 to 20 lots, rural residential type subdivision, through to 50 or more sort of residential sites. Every one of those proposals has fallen over because of the cost of developing Sawmill Road, Totara Valley Road.
So we know what you mean. We know what you mean. So
Yeah, and those have mainly been the cost of the roading and the cost of the sewer.
Yeah.
Water supply can be addressed through storage. It's not ideal, but it's an interim that works. There is a trickle feed up there. In the interim was that my company's been involved in 2 major subdivisions in Thames, major for Thames, not for other parts, being the Booms and Totara Farms. You've also had Tony's have Totara Close. Those are reaching their capacity. So, and the land values are quite high for Thames. The reason for that is because that development is constrained. There are a limited number of sections, so there's great competition for them. Council is committed to upgrading the intersection of Totara Valley Road and the stormwater, everything with the state highway. I understand that's to be carried out this calendar year, next financial year. With this commitment from council and with the discussions that were had about upgrading the balance of Totara Valley Road, I've got it right this time, I've had approach from 2 landowners who have wanted to look at development. I know of a 3rd landowner who is looking at the possibility. Those 3 parties combined control about 30 hectares up there. That is zoned residential. In addition, one of them has another block, another area, which is not zoned residential yet. But it would be obviously part of the development to extend into there. You know, that represents quite an extension for Thames, but none of them by themselves can do the road upgrade because of the cost involved. And because of the, for example, above Sawmill Road, you've got all the roading down to the bottom and the services, which is dead to them. It's
wind it up, please. You've done your time, so if you could.
Yep. We had a workshop with the TCDC last year, and at that workshop, what came out of it was that the infrastructure was something that the council really needed to commit to. The benefits I see of it is if you have that size development, land prices will probably drop, not substantially, but a little bit, they'll be more affordable, and that will encourage redevelopment within Thames itself. And that, I think, is why Totara Valley Road should be put back onto the plan.
Excellent, thank you. Appreciate it. Are there any questions of Phil? There be none. Thank you very much, Phil. If you've got any additional information from your presentation,
No,
appreciate it.
You'd struggle to read it.
It's good that you're talking to people. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Neville Heatley. Welcome. Neville, 348.
Want copies of my submission?
You've got additional, okay, thank you.
Excuse me. We have additional information, additional.
Additional.
Thank you.
Want to pass it down, thank you. Right, Neville.
Thank you. I'll just read this probably the quickest and most efficient way, if you're happy with that.
I'll give you the ballot for.
My name's Neville Hagley. My wife and I own a residential property at 110 Wairakare Road. Our family has been visiting Whitianga for over 50 years, so feel we have a good understanding of existing conditions and general direction in which the area is moving, or not as the case may be. This submission is restricted to comments on the solid waste and water future articulation within Wairakare. Firstly, I would like to point out that we have never had a wastewater issue with our property, but both of our neighbours have had problems. One with a septic tank and the other with a relatively new effluent disposal system they have installed. In both cases, the problems experienced related to maintenance, as both systems can work effectively if properly looked after. This reflects the issues with self-control systems, and hence my recommendation that any system that is constructed should not rely on the dwelling owner, but come under the council control. Perhaps I can just expand on that. I see in the existing plan there's recommendations, and there's 3 basic systems being spoken of. My recommendation is the top one, because you only get one bite of the cherry, and if you're relying on the people to look after your own system, and often myself included, only spend relatively short time there, so maintenance does tend to fall back, and that's what's happened with both our neighbours. With respect to our water supply, this is a gravity-fed system from a small dam located in the hills within Simpson's Farm to the north of Wairakare. Over the years, there have been supply problems, although we have never needed to have water delivered to our property. However, the system is coming under greater pressure, and I anticipate there's supply problems in the future. We do have access to the existing bore. However, when our neighbours developed their site, the wastewater disposal system is located within metres of the bore, so its viability is now questionable. We cannot rely on that for a backup. In this day and age, with all the health regulations we are told are important, I believe it to be reasonable to expect a good water supply and wastewater disposal system for the community. Till recently, one of the reasons nothing was done was due to the distance from any existing system. This reason has now been minimised with recent development at the southern end of the settlement, including water and sewage reticulation. The 2018-28 long-term plan forms a good starting point position for the 2021-31 long-term plan, so it's worth reflecting on its recommendation. On page 5 of this current plan, the section of wastewater and water supply services extension states Council has decided to proceed with the proposed investigations into extending the water supply and wastewater networks in Wairakare. On page 83, the plan is stated with respect to wastewater. Over the first 3 years of the 2018 and 28 long-term plan, Council will undertake investigation in Wairakare, that is by 2021. This is reinforced on page 114. Is a statement with respect to the Whitianga Wairakare extension. An extension to the Whitianga Wairakare wastewater network will be investigated in the first 2 years of the long-term plan, 2018-28. I do note this is a positive statement, as it says it will be investigated, rather than it may be investigated, or could be investigated. A solid wastewater future reticulation has been promised for many years, but to date no confirmation, no firm commitment has been made, and this does not provide confidence in the planning process. It is good the long-term plan makes commitments, but these commitments need to be achieved with the plans to maintain its credibility. 2018-28 long-term plan promised to supply will be investigated by 2021. I'm hopeful this is still a reality if funding has been included in the existing budgets.
Could you bring it to a conclusion, please?
You don't want to hear the rest of it.
You've got 5 minutes and you've got half a minute left.
My wife's part of the system too, I guess. I think it's 10 minutes, doesn't it?
I think.
Well, I'll just carry on. We're going to waste time otherwise. Thank you. The pressure providing water comes at a greater demand in the existing system. However, set out in TCDC water demand strategy document, November 20, page 10, the lower consumption observed in communities where meters have been installed on properties. This approach is supported. This is a practical option for any new system and has currently been implemented in the existing Whitianga business area. There's obviously a lot of water to be saved with the current water leakage, 40%, is controlled, and council is embarking on the program to reduce this loss. The pair of existing infrastructure only alone would exceed the water usage of a relatively small settlement such as Warikari. In the What's the Future Long-Term Plan consultation document 2021-2031 under nice to have projects, the state of the Warikari bulk water supply main has a capital expenditure of around $993,000. Of course, money needs to be found, although it's considered there are some 818 dwellings in Warikari. This works out at $10,000 per site. The next streams could be adequately raised over a period of 10 to 20 years, making it an affordable and worthwhile project. I'm certain the initial capital would be raised without a significant problem. This would bring the Warikari into the 21st century and by providing a good quality water wastewater system and by providing a modern firefighting system for the fire emergency to use. In summary, I believe now is the time to act. It will never be cheaper to develop wastewater and water infrastructure in Warikari. It will fulfil the commitment that's been promised for many years by Council. This should be clearly reflected in the 2021-2031 long-term plan.
Thank you, Neville, and appreciate the analysis within your submission, extra submission, and having a copy. Thank you. Any questions for Neville? There being none, thank you. Yeah. Right, Pat and Alison Ward, please. And you have 5 minutes. I will let you know when it's.
Good morning.
I thought there was somebody else with.
Oh, Alison's.
Okay.
I do have handouts that I'd like to distribute. Good morning there. Good morning, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Pat Ward and I'm here today further my submission on the LTP in respect to the removal of the Molochs at Whangapoa. The handouts provide my comments and bullet points in support of and reasons why we'd like to see the Molochs removed from Whangapoa, and a bunch of photos. The photos basically, you know, as they say, a picture tells 1,000 words. Alice and I have been landowners, property owners in Whangapoa for 30 years, or thereabouts. It's a beautiful place, we love it, we've invested in it. We saw the Molochs come online in around 2012. At that time we thought they were a good idea. They are no longer a good idea. They're a bit of an environmental nightmare, to be fair. There is a large portion of the Whangapoa Ratepayers Association that believe in them. They think they're a good idea because they are largely unaffected by them, at a distance from them, and quite happy to throw their bags, not just their paid-for blue bags, but any bags, rubbish, inorganic waste, car batteries, etc., beside the Molochs when they are overflowing. As you know, the Molochs sit right beside a children's playground. They're in the heart of our community as you drive into Whangapoa. They are no longer fit for purpose. They are indeed not in compliance with the reserve management plan. They were basically, they don't meet council's bylaws. I'm sure you're all aware, this has been a bit of a thorn on everyone's side for a long, long time. I think now's the time to be courageous and to make some decisions and move forward and remove these Molochs as fast as we can. I won't go through all the bullet points. I think you can read them. They're self-explanatory. But I just want to leave it there. I think this explains all the reasons why the Moloch shouldn't be there. What do we do in their place? And that's the $60,000 question, as they say. But nobody wants them in their backyard. Moving the Moloch somewhere else in Whanapara is not the solution. So look, there's land outside of Whanapara. The Tauranga residents surely will not want a tip anywhere near their settlement. So there's limited options, I guess I'm saying, and we've got an opportunity, perhaps the council provide a wheelie bin situation. The blue bags don't work as a curbside collection because Whanapara typically gets collection on a Tuesday, which means the bags are sitting out from a Sunday night till Tuesday. As you know, there's rats, there's birds, there's dogs, and it gets scattered and it doesn't work. So look, I'm not an environmental expert, nor am I a rubbish removal expert. But there are solutions. I think a wheelie bin solution is the right solution. But look, I'm happy to assist in any way possible to come up with solutions, and I'm happy to provide my services and time to help council come to some kind of finding on that. So look, I'm going to leave it there. I think that's enough information for you guys to read. I think it's self-explanatory, and I think the photos tell the story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah, and the photos certainly do tell the story. Yeah, really appreciate it. Are there any questions from anyone? There being none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now the next minister, I'll call Sue Lewis O'Halloran and Matthew Leeds. 280. No. Welcome.
Welcome. Good morning. Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor McLean, councillors, community board members, and senior staff of the Thames-Coromandel District Council for allowing us time to speak with you this morning as we represent our members, which number approximately 300 businesses in the Thames Community Board area. We hope you've had a chance to read our submission, particularly the cover letter, as we don't wish to relitigate the contents, but to concentrate on two key areas. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Matt Heath, a board member of the Thames Business Association. He is a husband and father, very active in his children's school and the community at large, and runs one of the biggest businesses here in Thames. He knows firsthand the challenges of a business operator, and also what he believes we can do to make Thames the best service town in New Zealand, bringing benefit to all of the district.
Great, thank you. Okay, so two areas we wish to talk about and make our voice heard. Firstly, I'm sure a lot of people, we were delighted to see the updates on the spatial plan and the backing of housing infrastructure in Thames. We would love option 5, please. Over 50% of our businesses we've surveyed, myself included, are being negatively impacted by the lack of access to housing. Okay? What I would say is for everybody here and every business in Thames, there's a lot of money being left on the table that we're just not getting because of that. I think it's important to state that more housing in Thames means permanent residents, families, school roles and funding, clubs and societies, our social fabric, the utilisation of our existing infrastructure, such as our hospital, as well as economic development and new permanent ratepayers. Point 2, economic development. We are a $500 million economy. We have a huge airfield, substantial flat industrial land, and are in competition with other districts. Opportunities pass us by. Our economic levy contribution, is this going towards industry and commerce in Thames or tourism elsewhere, and how can we better utilise that? How do we, as an association, partner with you all here to realise the value in our industry and industrial land, as well as our proximity to the Golden Triangle? We have land, businesses, industries, high net worth individuals all here at the moment. We think there's huge opportunities to strike now. Access to capital has never been so cheap. So those are our two wishes. industry and teams and housing and all those things mean, so, and what they mean for us and our members. So thank you very much.
And finally, as the Thames Business Association works towards self-sustainability, we'd like to be collaborating with all of the business associations on the peninsula. This would mean leveling the playing field by providing some funding to each, ideally based on a percentage of the economic development rate. Thank you very much for hearing us today.
None? Thank you. Okay, we've got the statement from Tony Winter.
Okay.
The next people, next submitters.
It's Shaki.
Sorry?
Shaki.
Shaki.
Yeah.
Shaki from and Tony Winter.
Yeah, fine. Okay, hi everyone.
Good morning.
We are speaking on behalf of the Thames Food Waste Minimization Group. We've been operating for the last 2 years, more or less. We are made of representatives from the Business Association, Single Centre Trust, Transition Towns, Full Strike, and a few other residents. Our focus is specifically on removing as much as possible waste from landfill, and with the outcomes around reducing emissions, conserving resources, and increasing food security. And in terms of the long-term plan, the focus is around reducing emissions and conserving resources, including money. And generally, when food and green waste ends up in landfill, it produces methane, which is an extremely harmful greenhouse gas. And instead, if food waste and green waste are being decomposed in proper composting situation, then that emission is being drastically reduced. And generally in the area, and generally in New Zealand, we're talking about around 40% of all waste is food and green waste. So that's massive. The vision of the Eastern Waikato Waste Minimization Management and Minimization Plan is to minimize waste to landfill and maximize community benefit. Now, the Solid Waste Joint Committee agreed that councils will continue existing activities to seek new activities to divert waste from landfill, and will fund waste management activities in ways that promotes waste minimization and recycling. We'll work with community groups, the private sector, and other local authorities to achieve waste minimization goals and continue to educate the community. Now, these are general to waste, but again, we're talking about 40% of that is food and green waste. The long-term plan asks us to consider a second weight bridge in Thames and wheelie bins. Now, that's around $4.5 million. And considering that commitment to reducing waste, we think that this can be done we can put that money into better use or adjust the way it's going to be spent. So what we'd like to see the council does is first engage in an education program. So similar to what we are starting to do with conserving water, we can do the same with waste minimization and specifically with food waste. The second one is around working with businesses to reduce waste. We're hoping to start working more with the business association. Also, council can do stuff in around New Zealand. And for example, in Taupo, there is a resource-wise program for businesses. So this provides businesses with an annual waste audit, a summary report with a detailed action plan, and resources to support and implement those actions. So it's something that we can do here in Thames too. At some point, waste is being produced, so there's nothing to do about it, and some of it is inevitable anyways. The best thing is to deal with it where it's been produced, so at homes, and that can be part of the education campaign. And we'd like to see the council using its purchasing power and partly subsidizing home compostable bins. And then the last one is operating a curbside collection for food waste that can be part of the wheelie bin operation. Tauranga, Hamilton, Nelson, Auckland all operating that kind of thing already. And just to finish, the costs that are involved in an education program and home composting pays itself from the reduction in waste. And curbside collection over time pays itself by the budget that's already invested in putting that waste into the landfill with some savings. So we believe it just makes sense to start putting money to that.
Thank you, Shakir and Tony. Appreciate it. Did you want to make a quick comment?
No, I'm sorry. I had a problem with being here, but I overcame it. But a friend of mine has gone into hospital for cancer, so Shakir.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions of Shakir?
Very clear.
There being none, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Come right, Simon here and Helena Meyer. 355.
Your presentation's about it right now. You can use the clicker.
Right. Thanks. Hi, we're from Thames-Coromandel Climate Action. Our submission covers 11 major topics and provides numerous examples of innovative thinking, leadership and climate mitigation from TCDC's peer councils. We also conducted a 12-question poll on local climate issues. We'll talk to just a few of these. Our poll is not a scientific study or representative of the entire community, but it does show that our concerns are not just those half a dozen old greenies and school strikers. It shows that these concerns are likely to be widely felt in the community. We also conducted this poll due to the prior lack of engagement on this topic by council. This poll indicates that respondents want more ambition from council in its response to climate matters. For example, waste management, a core function. The draft LTP is proposing just a 1% reduction in household waste to landfill. In an LTP forum, the answer was given that, well, you will keep sending it to us. Personally, to me, this sounds like a vacuum of leadership. What the community needs is positive and motivational messaging and education around recycling and waste reduction. On the council's own emissions, it's great to finally see the greenhouse gas reduction working group getting up. We urge the group and council to evaluate and cost out solar generation for buildings and facilities. This has been proposed before. It's guaranteed to be a long-term saving for ratepayers. The council would not only achieve cost and emission savings, but be a role model and community leader. With regard to EV vehicles, it's commonly heard that our council needs four-wheel drive fleet. Well, a look around the car park shows that there's plenty of council fleet that are standard vehicles. This would be a good place to start and a good test bed for moving to EV fleet.
As you may know, I'm one of the organisers of the youth-led climate strike events held over the past 3 years, which asked for more action on climate change from local and central government. One of the reasons that HCCM sent out the survey that we were just looking at was because we identified that traditional submissions process is not widely accessible. And especially in relation to climate change, the communities who will be disproportionately affected are often the ones who are least heard in these formats. The long-term plan consultation process excludes young people who often have limited time and energy, are at school during consultation meetings, and may not understand the technical language used. Therefore, I encourage you to take the climate strike events as an additional form of youth submission to the long-term plan, a submission demanding climate justice. You must build stronger engagement not only with youth but other frontline communities in your climate plans, as these voices may not be heard at traditional consultation. And it's especially important that you collaborate with Hapu and iwi, as climate change is a Te Tiriti o Waitangi issue as well as an environmental issue. We hope you will implement the suggestions outlined in our written submission to your long-term plan, and that your goals are in line with the Zero Carbon Act as a minimum. The areas we urge you to take action on include emissions reduction, waste minimisation, low carbon transport, walking and cycling, electric vehicles, public transportation, decision-making, landfill, solar arrays and infrastructure. This council cannot wait for the central government to deal with the climate crisis and leave it to younger generations and our most vulnerable communities to grapple with. Addressing the climate crisis is not a nice to have or an add-on. It's now incumbent on every local and central government authority in New Zealand. The timeframe scientists predict we have to act is quickly closing. As was recently shown in the High Court judgment, your decision-making must be lawful and take into account the gravity of the climate crisis, both for today and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, thank you. I was expecting a little bit longer, but okay. Any questions?
Yes, I've got a question about your survey. Where, Simon, you did say that it wasn't representative of all the ratepayers, which is not what we expected it to be, but where were people able to access the survey and how are you promoting it?
Online through the local social networks, the Tennis Grapevine Facebook group and our personal contacts. It was open for just 18 days and it collected 300 responses. So take it as a show of hands.
Thank you. Any other questions? There being none, thank you both very much. Thank you. Ryan McCullough, 312.
Yes. My name is Lois McCullough, as you stated, and my family have been property owners at Matarangi since before 1997. For 25 of those years, we have had a house bordering an open space zone that is currently being used as a golf course. Over the past 12 years, we have personally, financially contributed to the ongoing battle being fought by several community groups to retain the integrity of the development, but more importantly, the open spaces at Matarangi. The original intent and big picture for the development there has always been to ensure that certain core areas, such as the open spaces, as well as the esplanade reserves, are put aside and made safe for future generations. However, once all possible development stages are completed, what incentive is there in future to protect the open space zones, especially if those areas would produce a tidy profit? And will future councils ensure that the current rules are adhered to so that open space areas are maintained in perpetuity, considering there are still outstanding planning issues going back to the very beginning of the development? The original certificate of title for the open space zoned area, currently being used as a golf course, stated that the Matarangi Beach Estates Limited, the owner at the time, would ensure that if the land was not used for a golf course, then the developer would vest it to the council as a local purpose reserve. Even though that was clearly stated, in 2009 they still explored applying for a conditional use consent to convert Carterwood Golf Course from its status of recreational passive to residential sections. This included areas of open space which was vested as reserve, for example in front of the Pines and the Esplanade area along the harbour front. TCDC at the time said they were under strong pressure from Matarangi Beach Estates to treat their application as non-notified. Why? Probably because they knew it was wrong and would be strongly defended by the community. The council at that time failed to uphold its duties under the Resource Management Act to monitor the process of resource consents granted in relation to the Matarangi Structure Plan and to enforce observance of the district plan. These were fundamental failures by the council. People and communities rely on council's observance of its duties so that they can conduct their lives with some assurance that the rules are being adhered to. But planners in the past seemed instead to be responding to the bullying tactics of the developer. This led to serious consent and consent condition breaches. It is unacceptable that residents have to keep council planners honest by playing the role of planning police. Council have allowed developers to ignore structure plan requirements in several areas, allowed them to transfer allocated open space areas that better suited the needs of the developer, with no consideration for the wishes of the community or the integrity of an intentionally created coastal village and allowed a developer's failed registration of a land encumbrance to TCDC to go unnoticed and not followed up, thereby losing that encumbrance to the next Matarangi developer. The Matarangi development land has changed ownership multiple times since its inception. These owners have not only been developers wishing to make a profit from subdivisions, but there have also been banks needing to recoup financial losses from those failed developers. Throughout this change, there have been multiple councils, multiple council staff, several district plan changes, and lots of unfinished development business still to be signed off. There are a lot of people with a large stake in Matarangi who are very concerned at the dumbing down of historical information and naivety of council staff around what has occurred over the years and which will no doubt come back to haunt us again and again if not remedied now. Many think that the recent purchase of the open space areas from Golf 2012 Limited by a small group of private Matarangi purchasers and managed by Matarangi Trust means that the area is now safe. But those purchasers never intended for it to be a permanent arrangement and made it very clear from the beginning that they expected to be paid back as soon as possible. The only way to ensure this is through partnership with TCDC and the assistance of council's loan. If council do nothing, which is the council's no frills and preferred option, then there is real danger that the temporary owners of the open space land will sell it on as well. Therefore, just relying on the district plan is in no way going to protect Matarangi's open space, as any new owners will ignore it, as they have done in the past, and we're back to square one all over again. And I do not want my children and their cousins to be revisiting this in 10 to 20 years' time and be back in the Environment Court defending their right to the Matarangi open spaces as we have been doing. Given the amount of money council has already spent over the past few decades defending court hearings around Matarangi zoning and open space issues, and no doubt will be required to do so again in the future, the current option to temporarily lend the money to ensure community ownership is, in my view, the best long-term option. I know we can't be held responsible for the things our predecessors did. However, we can put things right for present and future generations. The council should now take this opportunity to acknowledge how the actions or inactions of their predecessors have led to the current situation, and now you have the opportunity to fix it.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Lois? Tony?
Are you going to leave your full submission on file for us, please?
I can do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Would you like this piece of paper, or shall I send it individually?
Start. Great.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'll now invite superintendents to present. Great.
Yeah.
So 5, 1, 2, 6. Page, that's it.
1 to 6.
Right, Ralph, one back, I'll give you 10 and then I'll sort out the questions for the last 5.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, so if you want to finish shorter than that, then that would be fine, and then we'll take Warwick. Okay, thank you, Warwick.
Just to say thank you to all the councillors and for your hard work with the hearings and the submission process, so hope it all goes well. On behalf of Thames Community Board, I have got some additional comments. I'll take what the submission has read, and they're only just short additional comments. It might take about 5 minutes, that's all. So please note that the actions recommended by Thames Community Board in their submission, especially as relates to the reasons Rhodes Park will become a must-have relocation from years 25, 26 year onwards. So just to make note of that, we believe as a community board that it will become a must-have. We also note that any identified elements of Pole and Mary Street makeover would best be synchronised with any planned road rehabilitation and infrastructure renewal if it were to happen. Budgets might be limited to a better quality makeover for Mary Street and Poland Street in the immediate areas for 2 or 3 million rather than the 9 million plus proposed nice to have extended Poland Street upgrade. The Create the Vibe trial seems to be going very well, so and the feedback from it has been excellent. The question of TCDC visitor parking fees investigation is supported in principle, but Thames Community Board has asked me to raise likely concerns regarding the impact on Thames economy. Thames being a business retail intense environment as opposed to a more tourist visitor intense environment, whereby the impacts on business for Thames would need to be very carefully assessed. In addition, it should be said that Thames Community Board have indicated their support for a full review of the district-wide solid waste strategy and method of delivery. The Thames Community Board has consulted with me to say that they would like these programs to be more ambitious with reducing food waste to landfill by food waste collection facilities, increased education, waste minimisation efforts. This commitment is requested as part of the long-term plan process and should be stated. Thames Community Board would like to acknowledge the importance of the long-term plan commitment to accelerate options to cater for land subdivision, especially at Totra Valley and other areas that have been mooted. With short-term wins, with any resulting housing opportunities alongside a growing but certain economy potential to expand commercial, marine and industrial sector economic activity. Really important stuff. Thames Community Board welcomes initiatives like the Kauronga Walkway Cycleway through our long-term plans. Thames Promotion Strategy, where it's been stated, Thames Urban Development Strategies, where it's been stated, and commitments to transport, economic, social wellbeing, etc. So that's really the only additional comments I wanted to make. And I'm open for any questions if there's any points of clarification required.
I've got a question. In your written submission that you make of wanting 303,000 for the Windtech building, and we've had reports around this council that that building should be demolished. And I'm just completely at a loss.
That 303,000 is for.
Well, is it? I want to know why we've been told it should be demolished, and yet they want why. What's the reason behind it? My question is, why would you put 303,000?
To demolish it. That's how much.
That's what it is to demolish it.
Yeah.
I didn't read it that quick.
Yeah, that's what we need to remove it.
Okay.
So that's a cost for the removal, Murray?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just fine.
Yeah.
Got a lot of asbestos in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question, for
Thank you,
excuse me, I have a question for Strat. Strat, is the community board aware of the later information around the benefits of having key car parking back to the back of shopping streets, if you like, very much like a Las Vegas or mall situation where you've got plenty of parking just outside of or the back of main street?
No, I don't think we've been made aware of that at all, no.
It seems to be coming through at the moment.
Coromandel's been there. We've got Coromandel's.
Coromandel's got that, it's turning into a little Las Vegas.
And it's
So
working.
I just thought I'd ask a question. Are there any other questions for Strat? There being none, thank you very much, Strat. Really appreciate that. We'll take one more submitter, if we may. Warren Brooks for the Thames-Coromandel Community Board.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Welcome.
It's good to see the fronts of some of these people. I was just looking at the backs of most of them.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's different topics.
We really appreciate you being here, so thank you.
The Thames-Coromandel Community Board wishes to make the following submission to the long-term plan consultation document. This is made in the knowledge of the council's objective of a no-frills budget and focuses on items that are seen as essential for the ongoing provision of services to meet the growth and development occurring in the Thames-Coromandel area. Submission focuses mainly on the activities that were originally intended to be completed in the first 3 years of the LTP. Activities outside this period will be subject to a further review in 3 years' time, so can be dealt with at that time. The main issues, issue 1, a no-frills budget. The Thames-Coromandel Community Board are submitting in favour of option 2B, with only some projects from the nice to heavy list. The Manarangi, issue 2, The Community Board does not support any of the options provided. The Taiaroa Community Board provides the comment that the total land purchase and operating costs should be funded by a Matarangi targeted rate and the Matarangi Community Trust. Issue 3, the Whangamata Community Pool, we do not wish to provide comment on. Issue 4, sale of land in Whangamata, we do not wish to provide comment on that either. Issue 5, the increase in costs of rubbish and recycling. The summertime rubbish collections, the Taiaroa Community Board are submitting in favour of option 1 to reduce the frequency of rubbish collections at Whangamata and Paranuri between Boxing Day and early February, from 3 times a week to twice a week. Not sure why Whangamata, it should be Taiaroa, I think. Quite no way we're talking about Whangamata, but I'm assuming it's Taiaroa and Paranuri. Initiative 2, Matarangi and Paranuri refuse transfer stations. We are submitting in favour of option 1, no change, to retain the Matarangi and Paranuri refuse transfer stations as they are. Issue 6, the charging visitor fees, visitors fees and charges. Investigating visitor charges, the Taiaroa Paranuri Community Board are submitting in favour of option 2, no change. Continue with our current mix of fees and charges and rates revenue to pay for facilities and services. The Paranuri Taiaroa Community Board provides a comment that they do not support the annual boat permit charge increasing to $200, but do support an increase of the annual charges to $100. Eyesight, the Taiaroa Paranuri Community Board supports the decision to no longer fund the Thames and Yanga eyesight. The rubbish and recycling, the Taiaroa Paranuri Community Board supports the transitioning to wheelie bins for our curbside rubbish collections instead of buying the blue bags, and continuing to support our community resource recovery centres introducing other recycling initiatives. Just a tag on that. We, like I guess other areas, have big trouble with seagulls, dogs and etc. with the blue bags, and the lack of people taking the bags when they leave their properties. Instead of taking their bags out to the transfer stations, they stick them out. So I know we all have that problem. Heading on to the CAPEX, we would like to move items included in the must-have priority list of the LTP. These are supported by the Community Board. We'd like to retain all the CAPEX items included in the draft LTP. The Manaia Road Hub Library Extension, funding is shown as being needed in the 2022/23 and 23/24 years, totaling $455,000. In the nice to have list, the Taiaroa Heritage Group have been raising funds towards this project for 3 years now, and Council are at present in the process of getting the reserve classification changed. We would like to move the funding for the Manaia Road Hub to the nice to have, or from the nice to have to the must do. This would not impact on the 21/22 year, but take effect from 22/23. A little bit of explanation about that. Some years back, we agreed on leasing our meeting room, which is part of the library, to the information centre, on the understanding that they would be looking for a house of their own. That all fell over. So they're quite happy sitting in there, but quite frankly, we do not have a lot of alternatives for the elderly and groups to meet. We have a church hub or annex. There are people who, of course, don't like to sit in a church-oriented type area. The other one is down the hall, a little old prefab down there that attracts rent. So we would like to get this building underway, this extension, so we can look at the heritage and we can flick the information centre in there so they can co-locate, create a hub and get our meeting room back. Footpath construction, an annual budget for footpath construction in the wider Tairoparanuere area has been in place for many years. It is used to develop new footpaths in the high-risk areas to improve pedestrian safety. This is a high priority and should be included in the must-have priorities. So we are asking for the funding for the nice-to-have, from the nice-to-haves to the must-dos in the LTP. This would add $67,000 to the 21-22 budget. Streetlights, an annual budget for streetlight improvement in the wider Tairoparanuere area has been in place for many years. It's used to provide new and improved streetlights to improve traffic and again safety. So we'd like to move from the nice to have to the must do. It would add $26,000. It's not only it's to improve traffic and pedestrian safety. This is a high priority and should be included in the must-haves. The minor reserves for many years has been an annual budget for reserves minor projects. This has been used for improvements to services and facilities with an annual program of works. This type of works funded from this has been picnic tables, seating, walkway improvements and extensions, landscaping reserve areas responding to health and safety issues arising from. The budget is in the nice to have and needs to revert to the priority projects. Paku boat ramp. To introduce boat ramp fees in Taira, we need to have this Paku boat ramp up and running. So we need to, we were suggesting, we would like to move the Paku boat ramp funding from the nice to haves into the must do's. But add another $33,000. And lastly, the Paranui CBD car park. There's a shortage of parking at in Paranui around the middle of the town there. So we would like to move the Paranui car park funding from the nice to have to the must do's. We'll add $92,000 to the year. I think we're looking at something like $6.80 if all these things are adopted. Additional $6.80 rating unit. Are there any questions?
Well done.
Sorry,
Question, Martin.
no question. Oh, sorry.
Question. So just around the boat ramp fees.
Yes.
So, and I'm not trying to give you a leading question, but do you think there's support for those fees to be introduced if the public can see that there's an addition, that they're actually getting something for those?
We understand that money's raised, and Willie Ann can probably talk about this, and Wangata, they received, I think Wangata $66,000 last year, and it's retained in the harbour development. Is that true?
For the dredging of the harbour.
Well, whatever, yeah.
They used to take all the money from the trailers and use it to dredge the harbour, the whole lot.
We've got our new wharf, which has a well-used boat ramp with very limited parking. That's another hassle. Over on Paku, where a hell of a lot of the boats use the foreshore of Paku.
Okay.
I mean, that's where we want to put this ramp, and then we can target the users. Without it, we have no way that we can successfully target these guys. So, yeah. And then again, the boat ramp parking over there is another issue.
Yeah, it's a big issue. Big issue.
Park. Everywhere.
That's come out quite clear.
Are there any other questions of Warwick? Warwick, thank you so much for sitting so patiently and for your continued attendance in the chamber, which we really do appreciate. So thank you everyone. We're going to now adjourn for morning tea.
Yes, you're racing.
Thank you.